Hello, welcome everybody to the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This is episode number 376, excuse me, I'm a little rusty, for February 23rd, 2025. I'm your host, Talmaster99. I'm back. I'm not sick anymore. Well, not really, I guess, but still got a cough, so I have to mute here and there every once in a while. But with me tonight, Mr. DBQ Hams. DBQ, how are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I might have caught your cold over the internet, but
boy.
no, I don't think it's that bad. But it's been a quiet weekend of not feeling great, but it was a good reason to get lost in some video games this weekend. So
Nice. Yeah, I'm sorry I gave you the virus, the internet virus.
but I had, a screening for these things. I didn't click on that download link you sent me.
See? Like I tell my son, you got to scan every time you download something.
That's right. Just because you wanted gift cards, I don't know.
That's right. And of course, we have Mr. Game Logic. Game, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I think you guys were just giving yourselves some time for the new games to start coming out for 2025. It was kind of a slow, creaky start. Cal and I were the only ones in on Dynasty Warriors Origins, which is understandable. That game only has so wide of a splash, but
Niche.
feel like the heat is starting to pick up. It's starting to get a little spicy on the gaming market. So a big week of talks as well. Lots of great interviews. Matt Piscatella on Kind of Funny Games Daily. Shuhei Yoshida on Sacred Symbols, and then Kerry Patel and Fergus Urquhart on Podcast Unlocked. So I think you guys were just letting yourselves wait for the boulders to start rolling downhill.
That's right. They're coming fast now, really fast. All right, let's jump into our main GX story. Speaking of which, I think it's been a while since we've all played a new game here that's come out in the past week, and that game is Avowed. I played it on Xbox Series X and on my PC so far. Actually, on my Xbox Series X, I played it first on the through xCloud, and the graphics were not looking too good when I was playing through, which is kind of interesting because usually I usually get, I have a pretty good internet speed and usually stuff, this is a single player game, so it's not like it's multiplayer or anything like that. But it was looking kind of rough when I was playing through xCloud. Played it a couple nights and I thought, well, maybe the first night, it was just, something was going on, family was on the internet too. And I played later on the next day when they were all asleep, and I was still like, it didn't look all that great. So I finally installed it on my Xbox Series X. And it looked fine, PC obviously is still going to look, fantastic. It's going to look better, but it does look a lot better once I installed it. So, but just the game itself, to me, very Skyrim-ish like to me, which I liked, which I have no problems with. I think I've been looking for that even when Starfield came out. I was like, yeah, it's Skyrim, but it's not. Like, I guess there's something about the fantasy setting. I think that just lends itself, for me at least, for like a kind of openish world. And it's not a huge world. It's not like Skyrim. I don't think it's anywhere close to even a Skyrim level map, I don't think, as far as I've seen so far. But still kind of open.
Are you playing in first person?
Yeah, I'm playing just mostly in first person. Every once in a while I'll switch it to third, but usually not too often. I think I've gotten used to that first person now. I playing a Skyrim, I remember I used to switch between the two a lot, especially if I was traversing the world. I would throw it into third person so I can kind of look around a little bit better. But I mean, it's not as large and it's not as big. It's even some of the parts are kind of corridor like they kind of funnel you into places. So I don't even, it doesn't even bother me going third person, or not going to third person. Yeah, but story wise, I mean, I've been liking the story. I've seen a lot of comments, so like the story's kind of boring, or it's like it's mid, as kids say nowadays. It's all right, but I've been enjoying it. Like, obviously this fantasy setting, so and it's not Skyrim, so a lot of the terminology is kind of similar, but you got all these weird, named places and people and stuff. So it's kind of get away from the Elder Scrolls lingo, and I have to jump into the Avowed world, Avowed world, excuse me. But other than that, I'm actually kind of liking the story. You're the one, basically, going through the story. So it's kind of run of the mill. Maybe that's the problem with some people. It's kind of it's nothing spectacular or special or anything like that. But
I'm kind of really, the story has sunk me. I mean, it is like I've really sunk. Like, it's great. Like I've sunk time into it. I've, spent time in the journals. It's got me thinking about, I want to see more of the Pillars of Eternity world, right? I think I own the original one on Steam. I know I don't own Deadfire, but within the first hour or two, they reference Deadfire so many times that like you don't need to come in with other stuff. But I think their world building, I've really been impressed. I mean, I enjoy an Obsidian game, and to me, it's the writing is really excellent. I enjoy the characters. I enjoy the world building. It's sunk me. I mean, it's pulled me in, I should say, not sunk me. It's pulled me in more than the combat has.
Yeah. I mean, it's well acted too. Like I haven't really found any like acting that's like terrible or anything, or kind of cringy. Sometimes you kind of you see that, especially in the NPCs and stuff. But it's been pretty good overall.
The one that I feel is very lukewarm is the king in like the opening sequence. Like who is the entirety of the narration really until you meet Garrick, right? Like that. So there's about 5 to 10 minutes or so where it's that guy, and I'm just like, by the 10 minutes, I was like, great Scott, man. Like that was the one that was like, I was like hoping, I was like, please, it can't like all be like this. And again, that's not that it was.
Who's the king? Not the furry blue guy, right?
No. When you open and the narration is going on about like the world and like the I call him the king, he might be the emperor.
The voiceover.
The guy who's sending you off on the mission and stuff. Yeah.
Yes, and I think having the voice actor for Garrus, right? When you meet Garrus or whoever the shark, your
first companion.
Your first companion? Yeah,
Kai.
I think he's Kai. Yes, right. Is very well acted. I appreciate kind of the dialogue back and forth. I'm always looking for more dialogue. So I'm curious, since we've all been playing, what kind of backstory and what kind of spec in terms of weapons and things like that. Like I took the, kind of in, I was the apprentice to the seer of the court, right? So I've got a connection to this person who's wandering around the land that you are. She comes and she goes. I can't remember her name. But I'm a court heir or however it's called. So I get some individual options like that in terms of some of my dialogue choices. But it makes me very curious what your backstory has been and if that opens up different dialogue for you all as well.
Yeah, I picked I think it was the first like mage basically build, or I guess role that you can pick in the list. I think it was 5 or 6, if I remember correctly, when you're creating your character. But yeah, and I can't remember right now what what it was called. But it basically it's like a student of magic. Basically, is what I am. Not like necromancer stuff like that. Just regular like fireballs and stuff like that. So I'm I'm going to build my character more into that more so than anything else. I think I've actually been using a two-handed. It's not a sword. It's kind of more like it's not a mace either. It's just like a big club, basically, as kind of my second loadout. My primary loadout's magic, and I actually have a magic sword. I think it's one of the first bosses that you can do, or mini bosses. I don't know what he's considered, but so I've got that going too. And then I have a tome. Excuse me. It's like a book that you can hold that, but I haven't unlocked any of that magic yet. So, and I've kind of seen a video of that too, which is kind of cool. And I think once I got past doing like the archer and kind of barbarian builds that I used to do in Skyrim, like I've been wanting to do more magic stuff. That's what obviously kind of drew me to Hogwarts Legacy when I first got into that, is because it was obviously that's all magic, but I'm kind of continuing that trend with Avowed too, and kind of just doing more of a magic build going forward. Game, what did you spec as?
So you guys mentioning that tells me that there's got to be some variance in either loot drops or like, because I've not come across like a two-handed club at all or a magic sword as a loot drop. So I right now have I found a bow, I found a grimoire and a wand. So there was like a sorcerer that had died,
like that off the dead guy. Yep.
Yeah. and then the one of the like the second like mini boss battle that I fought, the guy had like a two-handed hammer, or like so that's what I'm carrying now as my. So before that I'd had a sword. I had a sword initially, and then I found a shield. So then I had a sword and shield, and then I found the grimoire and wand, and then I got like the two-handed hammer. So my primary loadout now is the grimoire and wand, which gives me access. So I've like learned a magic spell on my own, and this grimoire gives me like another 4. So I have like 4 spells. And then, like I said, I have the hammer as like my secondary loadout. So originally I spec'd as a because I guess there's like a human and an elf race. They don't call them races, but they have the appearances. So I'm a human. My background is a like vagabond outlaw. So something about I had like 2 background choices, and one of them it basically makes it sound kind of like you were a thief, like you
the vagabond scout.
Yeah. So
yep.
it talks about you keep to the rooftops and like in the dark and things like that. And then another one, and then the other one, the secondary affinity is like a barbarian or something, or so it talks about like you just often like being enraged, right? And like handling everything through like anger, every confrontation. So that's kind of like my 2 backgrounds. But
how did you? Can I? Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go ahead.
How did you do the Arcane Scholar then as your background?
Yeah, I was just actually looking it up. Yeah, that's what I did. Arcane Scholar.
Okay, so we all have 3 different backgrounds.
Yeah,
and then there's another choice you get to make that's like it kind of makes it sound like it's your class. So I picked like a ranger or something like that was supposed to give me like a lean towards ranged weapons or something like that. So, but the funny thing is that, and this is one of the things that I wrote up. So my basic write-up from the intro was my comments were straightforward, intuitive, removes a lot of the cruft and needless clutter that some RPGs put in your windshield that gets between you and just finding the fun. Movement is a bit superheroish, but that also makes traversal a breeze and not a clunky pain in the butt. And then this comment, shifting from melee to magic to range is a piece of cake. And that's the one thing that kind of really sticks with me in the opening. Like, so supposedly I'm supposed to be a ranger, and I found my bow. And because the combat is so intuitive, using the bow is awesome. Like, you sight in on enemies far away, you fire at them. One of the things I love about this combat is typically in most RPGs, if you try and use a ranged weapon at a in close enemy, it's generally just a horrific experience. Like, you get your butt kicked right, left, right, and up and down. But in this game, you can actually do it. And you can do it by sighting in quickly or just firing kind of from the hip quickly with the bow. But even though that's supposed to be what my character is, utilizing melee weapons has not been a problem, but also using magic has not been a problem. And like I said, I'm using magic now as my primary because it does the most damage from the things that I have, and it gives me the most variance, right, in terms of ways that because I have like a thing that goes out like a flamethrower.
Mm-hmm.
Like it shoots a flame, but the flame stays on for like 4 or 5 seconds, and then there's like a freeze thing, so that it freezes them. It gives them cold damage, but also freezes them in place. And then the spell that I've learned is kind of like the old Dungeons and Dragons magic missile, where it fires like 3 missiles. But these things are kind of like homing, and they go out and they meander around, and then finally strike the target. So, I mean,
you get that as like your first level up, or one of your first level ups, or you get a special skill unlock. And yeah, I took that as well, is because it's interesting. I've also kind of spec'd in the wizard aspect, given my background of a court kind of seer, and so a lot of intelligence and persistence, but I'm similar to you. Like, I find myself, especially as I take on bigger enemies, having a shield to parry has been helpful, because the grimoire doesn't necessarily help you with that so much. So I'm swapping back and forth between either a sword and a shield, and my wand and grimoire, or I've also picked up kind of a flintlock, like a pistol, and use that with a shield as well. So which had the highest damage for a while, but it, you've got a reload in there, so you've got to kind of make that count. So it also ends up being, it's really, like you said, it's really simple to swap back and forth. Like if your stamina goes down with your bow in terms of spell casting, your wand, that you could switch to a bow or a sword pretty quickly.
Yeah, I got the.
Yeah,
go ahead.
So great. Well, that was just to say that's a great comment, DBQ. That's another thing that I really like is the notion of the stamina system, where that has an impact when you are doing combat. That has an impact when you are mantling and climbing up on ledges. That has an impact when you're sprinting. And again, it's super intuitive. One of the things like recently in RPG design that has really kind of chafed me has been there's some type of stamina system, but like the meter where it is, sometimes there's not a meter on screen, or so like the meter is like well below your sight line of where you're looking, and you're like, oh wait, why am I tired? Right. And then you're looking around all over the screen, like just where it puts the bar and how the bar moves and how the bar highlights and how profound the bar is. It sounds like a really simple thing. But the UI design in this game really sticks with me, as opposed to like Baldur's Gate 3, which just has like 99 bajillion points of light on the screen. And then like even digging through like everything that's available to you in combat is sometimes a pain. Quite frankly, I don't get how people play on console or even on Steam Deck, because even on a PC on like a 32 or 43 inch screen or an ultra wide, a 34 inch ultra wide, right, where I have like a ginormous amount of real estate, you still have to sometimes like slide like stuff over like on the combat bar on Baldur's Gate 3 because you just have too much stuff. But I love how this game, I love how it has the quick access slots, and like getting around the UI and getting everything into place seems super intuitive and super simple and just way cleaner and easier. Maybe even sometimes to a certain extent than Diablo. Even though Diablo has kind of like quick key slots, but like there's some great RPG, and they are great RPGs that have been out recently that just traversing the UI. I feel like I'm in a flight sim, right? Like with all the bells and whistles and stuff that you have to cognitively manage. I find this one is just a lot easier to get around. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tom.
Oh no, welcome, Brap. And also, I love his comment. No Baldur's Gate 3 slander. I'm a big Baldur's Gate fan, I suppose. Go ahead, DB, because I lost my train of thought.
Okay, well, while you get your train of thought back, I want to just follow up on what Game Logic said in terms of the streamlinedness, and like it really kind of it smooths out so many kind of traditional UI aspects, or just inventory aspects as well. I love that the inventory, you can, I've gotten overburdened, and you can simply just send things back to your camp. You don't have to make camp and put them in your stash. You have a stash. You can, from out in the field, it's really easy to send it back. You don't get overburdened. That's such a convenient way. I think the inventory system is really easy to manage. I almost wish there were more hot buttons to be able to, especially as a magic caster, right, to refill my essence. But I appreciate that I can kind of pause, go into the inventory, fill back up, to stay in the fight with magic. But all those pieces seem really, really streamlined and really easy to understand. The one piece that I should just look it up or read a tutorial. I haven't figured out how to have my companion do a flame at something. Like I'll click on that item and he'll say no target, and I haven't figured that out yet. But I haven't looked too hard either, because as a magic caster, I have fire.
What are you two playing on? DB, what are you playing on right now?
I'm playing on Xbox.
You playing on Xbox game? PC PC obviously, because you don't have anything else. Okay, I forgot. It's been a while. All right, yeah. So I actually did play it on the Steam Deck too last night, and actually, yeah, because of the UI being so not cluttered, it was super simple. Like I could still use pretty much the whole screen on the Steam Deck. I had some weird, I don't know, I don't know if something happened with my save or something, because then I was trying to play on my PC later on in the day, and it didn't have the save I left off on the Steam Deck, so I got to figure out what's going on with that. Maybe I just didn't have it sync or something. I don't know. It's weird, but yeah, it was. I didn't have any issues playing on the Steam Deck. And you mentioned earlier this is actually part of another game series, right? Pillars of Eternity. I completely forgot about that.
It's part of the world,
world,
right? It's a
yeah.
whole separate story. It's unique. It doesn't necessarily require that, which I'm glad that they didn't kind of title it Pillars of Eternity, because I don't know that I mean, I know what it is, but I don't know that it brings along any cachet with it as well. So kind of having it strike out on its own is beneficial.
Yeah, I completely forgot that they had mentioned that, or one of us did, or maybe they did when the game was first coming out or being announced. And I don't know. I think I maybe might have played a little bit of one of those back in the day, but those are a more isometric view, right? The Pillars of Eternity game. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're more kind of classic crappig CRPG kind of games, kind of built in the original like Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale kind of motif. And of course that is Obsidian's background, right? Between Obsidian and their lineage back to Black Isle, those are the games that they did. So
Okay. Yeah, which is actually, I guess. Well, I guess this game was announced. It's been in development 5 or 6 years.
it was 7 years total in
7 years?
development. So
Okay.
they did
Been a while.
they had to do, I don't want to call it a reboot, but I think 2021 I think is when they realized, because it was originally supposed to be more co-op oriented. It had more multiplayer elements in it, and I think about in 2021 they realized that the game just wasn't coming together the way they expected to. It may have been 2022. I think it was 2021, and that's when I believe they brought in Carrie Patel. Well, actually, Carrie had been an employee. She had done some of the Outer Worlds DLC. And then she had some ideas on kind of what this game could become, and that's when they transitioned to her as the director, and started incorporating a lot of her ideas.
Yeah.
Want to give another shout out to Innate as well in the chat. He mentions DBQ for your problem. You have to be looking at the thing you want your campaign to set on fire, and then open the radio menu, and the command is there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nate. Yeah, and to Brap's comment or question about any build, I think actually, as we've been talking, we all are right now running kind of magic builds, but I feel like any build is viable. That the way the weapons kind of spec out, it depends, if you enjoy a good parry system or a parry system in general, like running a one-handed weapon and a shield certainly provides that. Like, I think there's a lot of flexibility in this game.
Yeah, I think going back to Tal, what you mentioned about playing it on the Steam Deck, I now realize I wonder if at some point, like as they went into like the secondary design phase with the Steam Deck being on the market, if they were like, let's make sure this thing is modulated, right, and attuned to people playing it on Steam Deck, and let's take care of the UI. Also, maybe with thoughts that it would eventually go on to a Switch or Switch 2. Remember with Divinity Original Sin, I mentioned that in Civilization 6, like in many cases, when you move those things to the Switch, because the UIs can get so complicated, and like where the tutorials normally are just don't seem to congeal, that in a lot of cases, those games, like a lot of times I had to go back to PC to relearn how to play them, so that by the time I got onto the Switch, like I already knew what I was doing. So it seems like maybe they're trying to obviate a lot of that potentially. But yeah, and then DBQ with your comment, I think the class system as it sits for me is one of the co-hosts on the Basement Radio Arcade podcast, perhaps show, and then I also sit in on their show, Damage Per Second, Slow-Mo. Slow-Mo is a big build oriented player. Like he plays lots of games where he is very tightly coupled to the notion of a build, and he'll do multiple runs like with different builds and things. And I think with Avowed you can do that, but you can also not be burdened by that, right? If you choose not to, and you could just go into the game, utilize all the various systems, and then go on about your way. And so it's wonderfully flexible, as you mentioned, DBQ. I'll bring up another thing. Yeah, go ahead, DBQ.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just going to say the multiple builds. I think the other piece here that I'm finding is similar to in a BioWare game, like the multiple story paths and the dialogue options. Like from right now I'm at level 5, and there's been enough dialogue options where I feel like I really am curious what a different build looks like a different character backstory. Depending on how this continues, but I could see myself running a totally different just to get a different narrative experience.
Yeah, and I mean, you could definitely tell that that the narrative options, right, differ because they actually have like the background or component of your makeup that is like influencing, right, that narrative choice on the screen for you. So that helps. And it's very, like, for me, very often they'll pop one that's blank, right, because maybe you have that variable, right, in your makeup, but it's not strong enough or whatever to allow you that that dialogue option. um another thing that Carrie Patel mentioned is she mentioned how there's no romance options in the game, and she talked about how, you know, she I don't know if I should say she was insistent, but you know, that was a deliberate conscious choice that she made because she felt when people have romance options, they hyper focus on that as a meta, and sometimes to the extent that they ignore the game. Now, on one hand, you know, we often talk about on this show about how that's in a lot of cases that's how we enjoy a particular game, right? We enjoy that meta. So and it's sometimes wonderful when you discover a game and you go about playing in a way that clearly wasn't really necessarily intended. And you spend a lot of time diving into the meta and not like the core game is like an ancillary thing. So in some ways it's kind of wonderful to give the players that type of latitude, but by the same token, I can understand the creative choice to say, well, I really want you to pay attention to the story, and I really want you to pay attention to the world and the politics and like the social prejudices and all these things that are evolving, and not hyper focus on the romance. That to me dovetails into what I said before, that like overall the game just gets rid of a lot of cruft and clutter because I don't do romance options, right? And I know that's an unpopular opinion, but like I can't be bothered because I only get a certain amount of game time, and I used to spend time with them, but I only get a certain amount of game time, and I'm like, if I'm going to spend time playing this game, I'm not going to dump 30 minutes right to an hour of my 2 hour game block into chasing down some romance option just so I can see a faux hint at a sex scene, right? Or in Baldur's Gate 3, an actual sex scene. And I also think it was a creative choice in terms of there's a in video games there's a type of humor, and in video games there's a type of there are things that video games do to hook players to whatever you want to call it. What's in my mind is sort of like frat boy humor, right? Like I don't watch a ton of movies with frat boy humor because I feel like frat boy humor is pretty non-intellectual, right? And I don't want to spend 2 hours of my time watching Van Wilder or Harold and Kumar. They're great movies. They're funny. They're good for nights when, you know, I'm having a few glasses of wine, right? But they're not like my mainstream thing. And I think there's a little bit of that too. In that answer for her is like she didn't want people playing this game. A lot of people played Baldur's Gate 3 just because like of bear sex, right? Like not because it was a great RPG or that's what hooked them or brought them in. And I think she was deliberately trying to steer away from that. So I appreciate that creative choice as well.
Well, kind of expanding on that too, and thinking about what was the other game? Outer Worlds. Was
Yep,
the space
Outer
one?
Worlds.
This
Mhm.
one seems like there's humor in it in Avowed, but it doesn't seem as kind of goofy as Outer Worlds kind of was. It seems a little bit more serious, and I think that's another reason I kind of like it more. Like I liked Outer Worlds too, and I played that a good bit, but I was like, this one, once again, I don't know, as fantasy setting maybe, and I don't know, mostly space guy usually. Normally in those kind of games, I gravitate more, but this one, it's just I don't know. Like DB was saying, like the story sucking me in. You know, the gameplay is good. Um, you know, just kind of everything is kind of clicking for me on this one, and also going back to just some of the kind of the weapons. Like I started out with a dagger with my build. I don't know if you guys did too, or if it was something
So
different.
I think whatever your
Role.
backstory and what your class is, you start with a different. Like I started with a mace. I've heard
Okay.
people online that start with a spear. I think it all depends on what your backstory.
Yeah, there's a lot of different variation of weapons. I was very surprised. Like I just now, I think last night when I was playing on Steam Deck, I just now finally saw my first mace. Like I didn't even seen one before. Like I'd seen swords, Spears I had seen. Like I said, I had my two-handed club, and I've seen. I think it was a war axe or maybe a hammer too. It's just like they're like throwing all of these different systems at you, different weapons, and it's like I started off with like I said, the dagger. I did get a bow early on, and that thing was like super powerful. Like I was pretty surprised. Like I think I had found a sword, and I had a sword and shield at that by the time I found that bow, and I was just so surprised. Like that, wow, this is like the bow is like incredible. But now my two-handed like club thing, that thing is pretty like super powerful now. Like so, I kind of changed that like loadout to for my like melee weapons and stuff like that. I'm doing that and I'm trying to build up my magic, and it's like there's a lot of stuff that you can play with. You can do like recipes and stuff just like you could in like Skyrim and other games, but I'm sure those like gives you all kind of buffs and stuff that you can probably like become godlike. Well, I mean you are godlike technically in the game. That's what you call it.
Have you
But,
done any? Have you done any crafting yet, Tao? In terms of like leveling up your weapons?
I did. I did a couple to my armor that I had found because I had gotten like a high spec piece of, I think it was like a chest plate or something after doing one
Yeah,
of the
sometimes
bosses.
there's like unique armor.
Yeah. So I did that, and I think I might have done my club too, or the bow maybe before I got rid of the bow. I think it was the bow that I just upgraded. I was like, oh, I'm gonna try it just because I can do it now. But yeah, I've only done it a couple times so far because I mean you have to. That's the other thing, you have to grab all that all the different pieces like the iron or whatever you need for to the upgrades, and for those unique ones you need even was it Aldra or Alda, like that special stone to upgrade those ones. So and I've only seen that so far, I think, going through the main story, but I mean maybe you can get it doing like side missions, but I just haven't seen yet. So it's kind of few and far between, which I guess is kind of nice because I'm not like super overpowered like right now, and I think I'm like at 5 hours maybe that I've played so far since it's come out. So it's pretty nice. And then the other thing too is like with the health and the magic, or I think it's called essence in this one. Unless I have a certain type of gear, like ring or necklace or whatever, like that stuff's not going to automatically just repower back up after I've gotten hit a few times. You actually have to drink those potions to get all that stuff back, which I didn't realize. I'm so used to that in other games, where it just automatically refills for you. After a while, yeah, maybe you have to stop the battle or whatever, but that stuff happens. Now it's like, hey, you have to drink these potions. I do have a ring now, I think, that gives me health back when I'm in water, which is kind of weird. It's like super specific. And then I think I just got a necklace or maybe another ring, which is kind of nice too. You can have a ring on each hand, which makes sense. But I've never really seen that in other games. I think that one does give me some essence back too. That one gives me, that's another specific thing. It gives me essence back, but I have to be right next to one of my companions, which is kind of weird. So it's like there's a lot of these things like it's pretty cool that these things pop up, different pieces of gear and stuff like that. So I'm having a lot of fun with it right now. Any other comments on anything graphically, maybe, or just the system, like the gameplay itself? Have you seen any bugs or anything? I haven't really seen anything. You get those goofy things every once in a while. Someone like clips into like a floor or something, but companions seem pretty good. Like I haven't seen one get stuck yet, like I used to in Skyrim, where I would just lose a companion all of a sudden. Like I don't know where they are, and it would take like an hour of playing before I see that person again. But they seem to be pretty good here. I've never lost one, so it's been pretty nice.
Yeah, I mean, path following seems fun. I'm not as deep as far into the game as you guys are, so we'll see. Like, I don't know if there's the notion of fast travel or transport or anything like this, but I obviously haven't run into the Starfield thing of like, you get on a train and your companion is left behind, but when you get off the train, somehow magically they're there, or anything like that. I haven't been exposed to bugs, although like there's ample commentary out there about people who have. So I don't think this is one of those games that I'm personally being like dismissive of, like where I haven't seen any bugs, so therefore like bugs are, like there are bugs out there. I mean, that's why the game is an 8 on Metacritic, right? That's why it's mostly positive on Steam. But I just haven't run into them. I also wonder if that has to do with hardware sets, right, that people are playing on, because we have definitely seen games where if you're on an Intel CPU, right, you see certain things, and then if you're on a different CPU or a different graphics card, you see other things. Performance-wise, for me, I am playing on an Alder Lake Core i7 12700KF, an RTX 4070 Super, and 64 gigabytes of RAM. right now, and on a 2560 by 1440p 165 hertz display. So what I'm seeing right now is GPU temps running 55 to 65 degrees C, CPU temps 63 to 69 degrees C. So my bar for that is I get bothered when I see CPU temps up above 70. So I'm not seeing that. For frames, and I'm getting 117 to 135 frames per second on epic settings. So I have everything maxed out, ray tracing on, 1440p, NVIDIA DLSS 3 with frame generation on, and my FOV set to 105 degrees, which I think is the max. So I have everything maxed out. An 18 to 20 frame per second float, I'm okay with. When it starts to get outside of that, I start getting a little bothered with the degree of variance that I'm seeing. But for a game that's out of the gate and has had like its one main patch, like that doesn't bother me. One of the things I dislike is when I set my graphic settings, and there's always something weird with like in every game, like whenever you pick your DLSS settings, no game does a really great job of, hey, you pick this, therefore you can't toggle this, right? So when I pick my settings, now the frame rate cap is locked. So even though I'm on a 165 hertz display, I can't tell it to cap frames at 165 or 170, so that my GPU isn't just flapping around like, putting out render that can't actually be displayed on the screen. So I will periodically get times where my GPU is outputting like 235 frames per second or something like that, and I'm like, well, that's useless. But fortunately, it doesn't tend to be a lot that, so I haven't gotten super wrapped around the axle about that. And then another thing, two things on the UI. I think DBQ, one of the things you mentioned is, while I'm pretty happy with the inventory management system, there doesn't seem to be an all. So like you can only look at your inventory as a subcategory. There is not like just an all. So in most games, you get brought into an all on inventory, and then you can dumpster dive. And so that's not a huge deal, but sometimes I like, for speed, I was like, just show me the whole thing, because I actually want to see like multiple categories at one time. But yeah, and then the weapon loadout switching seems kind of wonky sometimes, because I think there's a key for switching to your secondary loadout, but then there's also a key for taking your secondary loadout and making it your primary. And so because I holster my weapons when I'm not actually in combat, what happens is there are times that I actually swap primary and secondary loadouts, like not swap what I have in my hand, but actually take the secondary loadout and move it to the primary. And when you do that, holstering your weapons doesn't work. So I sometimes have to do, this weird, Irish river dance, right, to get my inventory like keyed back to the right thing so I can actually holster my weapons. But I mean, that's a small thing.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because your inventory doesn't have an all, but I think the marketplace people do. Like that'll show an all, and then it breaks it down into, obviously like weapons or whatnot. But so I don't know why they did that. That's a little weird. Yeah, I was kind of looking for that too, like that all setting. And I guess I'm weird like you, because I do holster my weapons all the time when I'm not in combat. So I've always done that, going back to Skyrim and Oblivion and stuff like that. But it's an option, so I'm going to use it. DB, any other comments on it? And you're playing on is it an X or you're playing an S, Series S?
Series X, yeah.
Series X.
Yep. Playing. Yeah, no, I mean, it is. I'm finding it more engaging story-wise than most Bethesda games. I enjoyed Outer Worlds, but this feels, again, I think in some ways this is scoped and it's tightened up, so it is more authored than kind of the randomness or the stumbling into things. Although I also, I have already stayed up too late and find myself losing hours to it, because it's like, oh, I'm supposed to go over here, but what about this over here, right? Like I've stumbled into things, like I've got 3 godlike skills unlocked at this point just by stumbling into other things. And maybe that's not that far off the beaten path, because I think you get the second one in a combat one, but I feel like I found the third one just by going right instead of left to follow a path. And so I find it, again, really engaging. The writing and the combat, everything flows nicely. It's been a while since I've lost myself in a game, and this definitely feels like it's pulling me in that direction.
Just want to give two other shout outs. Our overseas contingent in the chat, Paul's Gaming Live and Falky. So welcome aboard, guys.
Yeah, Paul's Gaming Live mentions they make fast travel super easy in Avowed, and it is. It's really nice. You just go into the map and you can fast travel to. I think there's like a little certain icons you can do. You can't. I don't think you can fast travel to everything like right away, but it is pretty nice that it's super easy to do it.
And just another quality of life thing that they do, no arrows. Like, I know it's a controversial choice. I personally like it. Like, I've played plenty of decades of RPGs and games, like being stingy with arrows. I enjoy playing a game that doesn't make me bother about arrows and quivers, right? And all that kind of stuff. You just get a bow and you just fire your arrows, you know?
I'm laughing because the first time I shot the arrow, like in that tutorial section where you need to knock down the flaming fruit, like I immediately looked down in the UI to see if there was an arrow that I needed to go pick up. And I was like, oh, great. There's no arrows.
I in fact spent several minutes like scrambling through all those screens on my inventory to go, where's the arrow loadout? Like, I should be down one arrow by now.
Oh, yeah. It's nice when they make it easy for you. All right. If there's nothing else, any more comments, then DB and Game Logic, go ahead and take the second game on our list here. That looks like you've both been playing.
Yeah, Game Logic, do you want to start? Otherwise, I can start as well. I'm probably only maybe 90 minutes in, so not too far in,
or maybe even less. So I'll start because I don't have a lot. I just got started with the game. This is the first of this type of don't nods like style games, and it's actually not. And yeah, this is the first.
So the game we're talking about is Lost Records, and this is the first of 2 releases. So this is Bloom, and then in April, Rage comes out.
Yeah, so this is the first one of these games that I played over the years and years and years that they've been out. I've just never, it's not my kind of game. But I decided to give this one a toe dip. It is very, very Space Quest to me. That's like what rang in like finding the videotape to put in the case was just a torturous period of like insanity. And I'm like, where is it? Of course, I finally find it like in this one case that I just like passed by like 15 times.
Oh yeah, I walked over it multiple times as well. Yep.
Yeah. So I love the story crafting in the game, but the gameplay, I don't want to say I don't like it. It's just not me. It's probably like a mode that I need to shift into. And again, I used to love the Space Quest games. But I played 3, 4, and 5, and by the time I was done with it, I was like done right with Space Quest. And this feels like Space Quest. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, Space Quest, King's Quest, all the old kind of Sierra
traditional point and click adventure.
Yes, where you're searching around a room for like clues and tchotchkes and levers and dials and stuff to pull. Sometimes which it's a little Grim Fandango-ish, except Grim Fandango was like ridiculously occluded with like anything making sense for you to be able to figure out unless you weren't actually using a guide. But it's stylistically told. The graphical implementation is wonderful from an artistic perspective and presentation perspective. I love the voice acting, like the dialogue. I mean, it feels like Stand By Me, right? Or all 8mm, right? Or all these games, of adolescence and stuff, and it definitely tugs at the heartstrings, right?
8mm. Are we talking about the same?
No, not the Nicolas Cage,
not the Nicolas Cage snuff film one,
Super 8,
but Super 8.
Yeah, Super 8. Yes, thank you.
The J.J. Abrams one. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Yes, okay. Just wanted to. I mean, I know we're talking 90s movies here for a minute, so because this is set. I mean, like you do flash back and forth. Like you get some setting in 1995, which I think they capture pretty well. I think the tone there fits, but then you get kind of it's set to 23, I think is so. Like you still kind of get the opening dialogue is very much kind of post-pandemic, but I agree. I mean, the writing really is what this hinges on. I really enjoy the character development so far. And one of the writers is Nina Freeman. who was part of Fulbright in terms of Tacoma and Gone Home. But one of the big games that she did that I really enjoyed back in pre E2KG days was Sybil, which was a PC game, kind of very narrative, but a teenage girl. And so it captures both this kind of, later in life, but also kind of teenage years pretty well. I agree. I've enjoyed the Telltale games. I kind of played probably the first chapter or two of the original Life is Strange, but never really followed up through that series. So this kind of going into this kind of adventure game, kind of pixel hunting aspect, or at least icon hunting to try to figure out what things I can interact with is not necessarily my wheelhouse or something that I gravitate toward, but the content and the narrative that they're telling is really drawing me in so far.
Nice. Okay, I was trying to think of Life is Strange. That's I was going to ask you guys. That's pretty much kind of like what it is, right? Kind of that.
Yes, and it's the same studio that did the first 2 Life is Stranges, right? And then it was picked up by a different studio. So
yeah. The first 2 Life is Stranges, the Captain whatever, that was like the superhero like mini story.
Yes, yep.
And
yeah,
then,
those were the 2 that they did.
And I think they did 2 other ones that were like, I want to call it Twin Mirrors, but I don't think that's what it was called. But
that was done by a different company for the Life is like I think there's like 4 or 5 different Life is Stranges, but there are only 2 were done by Don't Nod, and so
yeah, I thought it's on their page as their game. So they've got Lost Records, Quora. I didn't realize that they did Banishers, which I played a little bit of on Xbox. So I actually need to see if I should. I think I still have that in my collection and can play it on PC. They did Jusant, which you played GBQ.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah, Jusant. I really enjoyed that on Game Pass, and then actually picked it up on PC to play on Steam Deck, which is that kind of climbing game, very atmospheric in terms of its narrative.
All right, so they have Twin Mirror and Tell Me Why on their page, as well as Life is Strange 2, Captain Spirit that I mentioned in the original Life is Strange.
Yep. Yeah, and I remember them all the way back to Remember Me on PlayStation 3 and 360. So, yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, from reading some reviews of it, it kind of, rightfully so, leaves you hanging. So it's one where I want to play, but I'm not in any rush to, because I know that the second half of it's not coming till April. So if I treat it like a chapter a day type of, just kind of picking away at it, is probably something I'll come back to here and there. And I'm playing it on PlayStation 5 because it's part of one of the tiers of PlayStation Plus, and it looks good. Playing it on headphones really sounds nice. There's a couple different dynamic ranges that you can set for. So,
and that's a good point, and something we do. I'm playing it on PC. I think I bought it on Steam. If you are so, one of my shticks, quirks is that people always, particularly this year, have been constantly asking me about GTA, and I'm like, I haven't played a GTA game since Vice City. If you harken back to Vice City, right, the key thing about Vice City was music, right? All that 80s era music. Same thing with this game, and we haven't talked about it a lot, right? Like if you are a 90s kid, right, and you love 90s music, like this has it like in bushels, right? So like that musical background theme of the 90s is a constant. I mean, it's another character in the game, basically.
Yeah, that music definitely sets an emotional tone at different points in time. So one of the other things to mention is that if you purchase this, you get both of them, right? You don't have to buy them separately. It comes together. So
I didn't know that. So I bought it on Steam. So I'm just going to get Rage when it shows.
You'll get the one,
that's awesome.
Single purchase. So it's a $40 game, I think, is what it was, and but it releases in chapters, but it is not 2 different purchases.
Yeah, that's pretty dope. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, that's awesome.
All right, nice. All right, let me talk about my game
Yeah,
here.
the speaking game that you don't get all the access to by paying one
Speaking
price.
of which, the exact opposite. So my friend texted me. It was actually a couple weeks ago. I played this a lot. Not last week, but the week before. I was really wanted to be on last week, but because I was sick, I couldn't. He texted me, like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this game called Star Citizen?" Oh, yeah. You mean? And then I this is my reply. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, the game that's in forever development." And he's like, "Yeah." Yeah, I've heard of it before. He's like, yeah, he's been playing with his cousin. I guess has been playing for a while, actually, maybe even since it first came out, maybe. But he's been playing for quite a while, and he finally got into it and was playing it. So I was like, oh god, it's like, all right, let me take a look, because you to get in to play the game, you have to, well, at least for now, I don't know if this has always been the case. You have to buy one of the ships, basically, to get into it. Like,
Well,
right,
they don't call it buying, Tal. They call it making a pledge.
Oh, making a pledge. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. So you have to buy in at, was it like $40 or $65?
Yeah, the one I bought, I think it was on sale actually for I think it came out to like 45 or 50 or something like that. So it was like one of the lower end ones.
Yeah, it's like a starter pack. I want to say the first
Yeah.
vehicle is like the Mustang or something like that.
I think this is one newer one that I got. It's called the Cutter. It's basically kind of a hybrid, kind of smaller hauling type vessel, and it does have some weapons on it too, so I could fight if I want to. I haven't done that yet. So I bought that one. I forgot what the exact name of it was. I'll have to look it up in a second. But I bought that one. 'Cause evidently, there's
Oh yeah, I see it now. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, there's ships there that you can buy, but obviously it doesn't give you the game to, or access to the game or whatever. It's more of like, once you get into the game, you can buy these other ships if you want, through either real world money, or you can actually use the in-game currency too, just by doing jobs and stuff. So, but yeah, so I jumped into it. We've actually been playing a lot together this past like week and a half or so. I didn't play it too much last week. I was just too busy, more at the beginning of the week. But we've been doing a lot of the mercenary missions or quests. I've done a bunch of hauling quests. That's where I've gotten the majority of my money so far. It's been fairly easy to do that. So now, and I don't know, because you played this, right? Correct, Game Logic, at one point.
I played this for like 2 years.
Oh, gee, okay, that's what I thought.
This was like, remember, so before this, I was never into games as a service, live service games, Call of Duty. So this was all in the walk up to, I think, the Modern Warfare reboot. Maybe I started playing it the year, but yeah, there was a year that like I played almost nothing but Star Citizen.
Okay, that's what I thought, and that's why I wanted to talk about last week. Obviously, I couldn't, but because I wanted to balance like what am I experiencing now to what you had your experiences with, like when you first started playing. So now there's actually two different star systems you can go into. So there's Stanton, that's where you start off on, and then now there's Pyro. I don't know if there was two back then or not, if you remember. So Pyro now is more, it's a lawless system. So you're more apt to get jumped, which I have been a couple times already. But I guess in Stanton too, you could still, people can, attack you and do stuff like that. But I guess like the consequences are more severe, because you can actually go to jail here, and I think that's one of the consequences. And Pyro, I don't think that's the case, obviously, because I got destroyed. Well, I was starting to get attacked, and I just logged out. I was like, nope, because then you just like after a while, you just like appear back into like whatever system you had beforehand, or whatever station or wherever you had been at. So that's what I did. I was like, oh no, because I was doing a hauling mission. I was sitting there, and I had taken all my stuff out, and I was about to lower it, and I see these explosions in the background. I'm like, what is that? And then I had noticed that they started to get closer to me. It's like, oh crap. So yeah, I had gotten destroyed. My ship had gotten, well, not destroyed, but had gotten taken out and disabled. So but yeah, it was overall, when this game is working, it's really good. Like it's a great game. Like it's cool to go out. Like even I was doing like stuff by myself. Like I was just doing the hauling missions, and I think I did maybe one mercenary mission at one point. And it's pretty fun. But it's just like all these little things that seem to don't work. Like literally, like when you're in a station or in some kind of like it should be like a safe area for you, or like one of the big systems like Orison or something like that, or Hangar 18. There's a bunch of different ones. The elevators don't work. Like they literally will not work. Or if you get into an elevator, you're kind of just stuck in there, and so you gotta back out of the game, or at least go back to the menu and then come back in, or sometimes even totally just close out of the game, and then restart it. It's like, how has this game been around for what, 10 years now, 11 years? And there's something simple. I don't want to say simple, because obviously it's a huge like universe and world that they're trying to build here. Like, how is like the simplest thing, like an elevator is not working?
Well, it works. The problem is that servers become bugged.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll pop onto a server and you'll run into that bug, right? And then you'll log out and you'll log back in and you'll be on a different server and you won't have that problem. Right. Or maybe you will log back onto another server and like the whole network is bugged, right? So the elevator subsystem, right, will be a thing. And you're right, that's the, I mean, you're hitting on the thing that both kept me in the game, but then also caused me to bounce out, right? Which is that starts it, and you and I are alike, right? And like you've mentioned that like you're usually a sci-fi guy, versus like a fantasy setting. And for those type of people, for like people who like Star Trek is your thing, right? And in my opinion, Star Trek are the real sci-fi fans, not Star Wars people. So like if Star Trek is your thing, right? And by that I mean Star Trek people, I think I'm making a gross stereotype, but I'll just split them into categories, whether you like Star Trek or the reason I think people like Star Trek, the reason I like Star Trek is it's highly system based, right? There's a structure. It's for OCD people. Like there's engineering theory, there's physics theory. Like there are things that work in Star Trek, and there are things that explicitly do not. And there are rules, and those rules don't typically get broken. Every once in a while, they get broken with a MacGuffin type of thing, but then there's an explanation for it, right? There's not, in my mind, not talking about the J.J. Abrams stuff, outside of the J.J. Abrams stuff, in general, there tend not to be plot holes. Sometimes there are, but even sometimes those get retcon, right, and filled, right, by retcon. So for people like that, you go into something like Star Citizen, and it's kind of the same thing. There are rules, there are systems, there are subsystems, there's a political system. You understand it. There are organizations, and that keeps you coming back. I mean, you talk about Bethesda and the walkout moment, and like, great. I mean, I'm just like, in video games, I will still say, despite the problems with Star Citizen, one of the most poignant, epic moments I ever had was that first time stepping out on the deck of a space station and seeing my starship, right? And like there's a big, they there's so many things they do well. Big musical flourish, space opera, like all of the things that you would expect to get from a science fiction movie, like a space opera sci-fi movie. And you go out and you climb, and there's this, and when it's working, like there's this oneness, right, that you feel with your ship as you learn all the systems. And for me, I'm using a HOTAS, flight control system, and like you're deeply immersed in it. But then, like you said, like there are these things, there are missions that get bugged, like so you can't complete them. And those are the things that cause you to bounce out, or the randomness, right? It worked great the day before, but then the next day you go back and like something's broken, and that breaks the suspension of disbelief. But like you said, when it's firing on all cylinders, it is the dream and the ideal of Star Citizen is in my mind the greatest ambition that there's ever been in a video game, ever. Of all, like the concept and the vision of where they're trying to get to. And there's sometimes that you are standing right at the precipice of the portal where you can see through the portal to the other dimension, and you feel like you can touch that vision, and then something breaks it, right? And that's what's painful, right, about the thing.
Yeah. The other thing is that like every other time I load up the game, I have to claim my ship because it got destroyed somehow in the hangar. So that's nice. Thank you. And then you could expedite, like so for me right now, like I have like a starter ship, so it's like 3 minutes, I think, or 2.5 minutes that I have to wait. You can expedite that to like half of that if you pay a little bit, and it's not a lot of money. It's like a few thousand. That's fine. But doing that almost every other time, like when I was playing, it's like, come on, man, like really, like. And then I figured out that I physically have to sit in the hangar, wait for my ship to go all the way down and the doors to all the way close, and then everything's fine like the next day. Like so far since I've been doing that, I haven't had an issue where I have to keep claiming it, and expedite and stuff like that. But and the other thing is like yeah, obviously, like if you're out in the world and your ship gets destroyed, or if you get killed, like you lose your stuff. All right, that's fine. Like I mean, that's happened in other games before. You know, you can go back for it too if you want. You know, you have to remember where you were. Unfortunately, like if it's not somewhere like obvious, like if you're on a huge planet, like there's a bunch of different places you have to go. You know, I might not be able to figure out like where it was, like, and my mission might be gone. Sometimes that's happened too, like you mentioned with mission bugs. Like sometimes my mission is just gone. Like and other times it's still there. Like when I've loaded back in, so it's just like, oh man. But
Or you like I mine stuff, right? Which takes a ton of like an hour, like sometimes 30 minutes, an hour of gameplay. You come back to like the space station and like the kiosk where you're supposed to redeem like all the stuff like that system was broken. So then you leave the game and you come back in, and then like your payload is not there. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. Like you mentioned, like yeah, you can do mining, you can do scrapping now. I don't know if they've always been able to do that. My friend, he always does like healing or medic or something like when we're playing games, and he's got a medical ship now. That there's beacons that people can drop when they get killed, and he can go to that spot. I think you get like an hour, maybe. I don't know if it's always an hour. Before you actually die, you can just sit there for an hour, I guess, if you want to, and wait for somebody to pick up your beacon, and they'll come and rescue you, or at least get you kind of patched up so you can get to a station or a hospital so you can get fully healed and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool. Like I haven't I've only done hauling now. I kind of want to do the mining thing. That sounds kind of cool. Or they're scrapping. So yeah, there's like different jobs you can do, and like there's huge ships where you can have like a whole crew of people on it, and that's really cool. My friend's cousin, he has a fairly decent sized ship. He could probably house like I think 4 people altogether. So he's got like a huge, like hangar bay. And he's got all these vehicles, like ground vehicles that he has, like a little like hover bike and like a 4-wheeler and all these other things. So he had them all in his hangar. So that's pretty cool. So I'm kind of wanting to get to that point at least at some point, maybe to at least get one of those ground vehicles, because when you're landing on a planet for a mission, especially those mercenary missions, you can't get close to the to those where you got to go that quest marker, because if you do, there's turrets and like missile launchers that'll just like shoot you down in like seconds. So you have to really like be like far away when you land, and you have to like hike over there, and just running is like a pain in the butt because it takes forever. You're like kilometers away or whatever. If you're lucky, kilometers away, sometimes even further. So yeah, I mean, like I said, like when it's working, it's a really great experience. Like I said, even when I was just playing solo, it's really nice. So but I'm going to keep going. Obviously, I bought the game, so I'm going to keep going at it. And also, it's in an alpha state still, which I was talking to my friend. Like, this is the alpha state. What's the beta? How long is the beta going to be? Because it's going to be like even another 10 years, 12 years, or whatever. And I don't think they've even really given a date of when that 1.0 is coming out. So, but I know I've been reading a lot, obviously, because a game like this, you kind of have to like read up on certain things just to kind of learn stuff. And they said this year they're planning on they're planning on working to fix the game, which that's nice. Like it's good of them, I guess, that they're working to get all the systems working correctly, and stuff like that. So hopefully that that'll happen this coming year. But just going back to like the ships and stuff, like you mentioned, like I was this close too to buying a stick so I can fly these ships, because when I was trying to do mouse and keyboard, that was not working. Like I could, and it might have been a sensitivity thing, maybe, or I don't know what it was. But as soon as I switched over to controller, I was like easy as pie, like to fly these ships. Like I had no problems whatsoever. So when you go between the two systems, between Stanton and Pyro, there's like a what do you call it? A wormhole that you have to navigate through. And there's like this. Basically, what my friend was telling me, there's like kind of this little like almost like a dust trail that you kind of have to follow more or less. You don't have to be like right on it, but you kind of have to follow that path to to get through the hole. And the first time I did it, I mean, I did it the first try, and I was using the mouse and keyboard, and boy, I was hitting the walls, I was hitting the sides of the wormhole and stuff, and it took me forever to get through that thing. We got through it though. Then I was like, all right, I gotta try mouse. I gotta try controller, because it has to be easier. Because I'm used to like even when I was playing not No Man's Sky. What's the other game? The other space sim game. Shit, I can't remember.
Dangerous.
Elite Dangerous, yeah. Like it was like tons easy. It's kind of reminds me of that, because it's like sim, you're sim flying. So you got total freedom of flight. You're not just going like back and forth, up and down. You can do, you can swivel around and do all kind of stuff. So as soon as I hit that controller, I did it like in like half the time or even less. So I was like super easy. So I don't know, maybe at some point I might still get a stick to just kind of fly that way, because that seems like it'd be the easiest thing to do. But for now, controller is good. I mean, it's super easy to do that. Just some of the I kind of using both as I'm using as I'm flying, and then as you're getting close to like a station or something, you have to hail them. And I think there's a way to do it like on the controller. I haven't figured that out yet, but you have to hit like multiple buttons and like hit two buttons at the same time and hit something. It's like a keyboard is like one button, boom. Like I'm just hitting that. So, but it's been more or less a decent experience, at least for now. I'll stick with it for sure, just to see how it goes. But yeah, I was so jazzed when I was first playing, and then just all these little things started hitting me. I was just like, oh man, it's like tearing me down. Like every time we would try to play, and it would sometimes literally take us like a half hour just to get into a mission and to get to the place and to do stuff. So I was like, man, like come on. And plus, if we had died before, we have to go back and buy everything, or we have to go to a certain station to get something. Because I'm like, this is a certain gun I liked, so I wanted that one, or the gear and stuff like that. So I mean, for the most part, you can get, I think, each level of gear, like the light, medium, and high gear in every station. Obviously, it looks different depending on where you are, but the guns for sure, they only have certain guns in certain stations or certain systems. Even like I think the one like sniper rifle or something that we were looking for, you can only get in that pyro system, so we had to go over there to get it. So, but I'll probably for now stay in Stanton just because it's a little bit more controlled as far as people jumping you and stuff. Like I didn't have any problems for the most part, but we'll see. Any comments for me on that one or anything? When was the last time you played actually Game Logic?
I want to say I installed it one time last year and like immediately ran into like a bug and immediately uninstalled it. I am going to take this opportunity to get back because it's been on my list to go back to. There's a couple other space sims out there. Like I want to take one of my PCs and just load up, Starfield, Elite Dangerous, No Man's Sky. This other game I've been meaning to get into, X4, which just had like a big expansion. And for flight control systems, Falky was asking, there's a bunch of comments I wanted to catch up on. Do the flight sim controllers work, or the dual joysticks compatible? Yes, they flight FCS's HOTAS's work great in the game, I think. Actually, one of the setups I use is a Thrustmaster T16000, and the T16000 actually has joysticks that you can configure for left or right hand. And so sometimes in that game in particular, but in some other flight sims, instead of the joystick and the throttle, I will hook up two joysticks configured for left and right hand, and actually use them right as a dual joystick setup. So so they work great. A couple of the comments are a lot about like the whole releasing, and I think what I'll say is I am like in my mind the game is always going to be an alpha, and they should just capitulate to that. And I don't have any problem with that. And I don't think a lot of like the community there, if you go back to 2019 to some old E2KG episodes, that's what I reported on for a year. The whole point was Swiss and I were constantly throwing slander at Star Citizen, and I said, look, finally, like if we're going to keep doing this, somebody needs to go undercover, right, and go into the Star Citizen community and actually be part of it, like, and figure it out. And I did that. And the community is bifurcated, right? There's a small cell of people who still get in there and act like bent out of shape and cranky and angry about the game not being released, and I totally get that. But there's a large amount, I would contend that it's like 70% of the community, 80%, who get that the game is alpha. They play it, they accept that it's going to be broken sometimes. Lots of them will control and manage how much money they spend, right, because of that. And then there are some other people who spend tons of money and then are bent out of shape, right? My feeling is the game's always going to be an alpha. I'm fine with that. It's incredibly ambitious. The company should just say that and get over it. What I wish they would, the two things that I don't like that I wish that they would do is, what I don't like is that the game is broken and then they periodically wipe everybody's progress. I don't know if they're still doing that, but that used to make me really cranky. You build up a bunch of credits, right? And then they decide, hey, when we go from this version to the next version, we're going to wipe everybody's progress and you're going to start over. I'm like, really? Like I've made this progress by tiptoeing on eggshells around your broken game, and then you're going to wipe progress and wipe servers. Like that's fine for some other like competitive games where, because there's a big change to the system, you're going to reset everyone. But like it made me particularly cranky in this case. And then the other thing I wish they would do is I would just wish that they would I wish they would take a mantra of getting to a stable build, and then pack as much and I don't care if it's one server. I don't care if only 50 people can be on that server at one time. Pack the maximum resilience, high availability, periodically bouncing the web application or whatever you have to do to keep that thing working, and just shard that and put it off like in the corner and say, look, if you want to not be bothered with the alpha build stuff and you want to play, like, understand it won't have the most advanced stuff, and we're going to keep the systems fairly limited because like the stuff that breaks all the time, we're not going to put it on that server, right? And let people have that and let it be stable. I don't care if it has like mining and like just PvE, right? That would be a way to kind of manage and help. And then there would be alpha stuff, and then even already as it is, even in the alpha build state, there's another server type that has like even the really experimental stuff that they haven't fully rolled out. So they could have far left R&D, like we're playing with stuff. They could have middle of the ground alpha, which is what everybody has now, and then they could have super stable over here on the right with limited availability. I don't really care. I mean, you could even make that only available to like subscribers or have some fee associated with it. I don't care, right? Just do something to enable people to play and not be in this constant state of I play one day and everything works fine. I come back the next day and like the most basic simple of stuff is broken.
Yeah, I don't think I want to get into the the PvE versus PvP splitting the servers that I've seen online. So, but yeah, I've seen a lot of that argument about just having a dedicated or something where you just do PvE, like that'd be fine. Like, yeah, that would be fine. But I think their original vision was just having an open universe, and they would police it, I guess, which I guess they are in some instances, but.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say on that is I understand people's complaint. It's not EVE Online.
Yeah, exactly. That was one of the arguments.
Man, I was waiting for spreadsheets. All this time I'm sitting here quiet, waiting for spreadsheets.
Well, I just mean in the way that EVE Online is like you step outside like the controlled zone and it is seal clubbing palooza. I just
yeah. There's actually another. I think there is a separate PvP. I think it's called Arena or something like that you can load into, but at the start of the game. But I haven't tried that yet, and I'm assuming that's just a pure like I don't know, maybe like a deathmatch thing or something. I don't know why. I don't know exactly what it is, but so there's that. All right, I think we've had enough of our new games for now, especially Star Citizen. But let's jump into news because we're running a little long here. Game Logic, you have the first couple, some hardware news on RTX 5090s or 50,000 series, excuse me.
Yep, I'll try and blaze through this really fast. First news story is over on The Verge. Do us a favor and check your NVIDIA RTX 5090 for missing render units. It looks like NVIDIA may have yet another issue with its flagship RTX 5090 card. A noted leaker claims it shipped out partially defective chips with slightly worse performance. Maybe check your card with GPU-Z and see if it's showing the proper number of 176 ROPs, which is render output units. It's not every card, but reports are coming in of Zotac, MSI, Gigabyte, Manly, and even an NVIDIA Founders Edition card with missing ropes. I'll go on to the next news story immediately because they are related. A second news story over on Igor's lab. NVIDIA RTX 50 series drowns in chaos, delays, and delivery problems. Let's skip by that. Some of these problems are hitting both the 5090s and the 5070s. No reports yet of it hitting the 5080s. Debugging or lack of planning. Officially, there's talk of performance problems with the GB203 and 205 chips of the Blackwell generation. Whether there's a real technical challenge or simply poor management remains to be seen. The fact is NVIDIA needs more time to fix bugs, which pushes back the market launch by several weeks. The RTX 5070 should have been released on March 5th. Now it looks more like the second half of the month or even later. The RTX 5060 may be hit even harder with a delay of up to 4 weeks. Customers hoping for a decent mid-range GPU will probably have to continue to make do with outdated models or overpriced leftover stock. Another reminder of what's going on in the swirl of the RTX 5000 series news cycle is that NVIDIA was supposed to ramp up production of the 5090 and some other SKUs because they were seeing a downward trend in their big class AI chips and developing disinterest by enterprise, and so they were going to ramp up their consumer lines. The part of this tale is that about I think they think about 0.5% of 5090 cards went out with render output units that were not enabled, and so on the order of magnitude of like somewhere between like 5, 6, or 10 render output units, causing a drop off of about 4%. Now, is that a big deal in terms of order of magnitude? No. Is it a big deal when you pay $2,000 for a card and you essentially expect, because of the price you paid, for it to be, I don't know, it's kind of sort of relatively perfect? Yes, that's the problem, right? In addition, where if I bought a 5090, I would just be living in mortal fear that I was going to get the same 12-volt high power, like burned electrical lead problem that the 4090 had, and living through that in the early adopter phase. But then to get it with these disabled ropes is also, it's just a problem. We're starting to see them crop up in the 5070s as well. Some of the review units that went out, the 0.5% manufacturing defect ratio that was put out for the 5090s, there's been no ascribement of that being the figure for the 5070s. So maybe the 5070s are the same, but maybe they're worse too. And so it's just a matter of a grain of salt if you're going to go buy one of these cards. If you do hit one of those problems, NVIDIA has said it's not their problem. Go back to your card vendor. They haven't said it's not our problem, but they say go back to your card vendor. That's who you have to resolve it with. I don't know about you guys. RMAing something is a pain in the butt. When you're not going to know that you have a problem without unboxing the card, unpackaging it, and installing it in your system, and then running some type of diagnostic. To go through all that and then find out you've got a busted card, then have to pull it back out, box it back up, ship it back, get an RMA, put your old GPU back in, right, to be your ride through until this thing, like that's a huge pain in the butt. That would incentivize me to just not be bothered. Maybe that would force me to go buy an RTX 9070. I know Warwana asked about that last week. It's or maybe I just like I did with the 4090s, right? I didn't buy 4000 series cards until I heard this whole 12-volt high power, 3-ring circus was over and done with, or theoretically it was fixed. That might be the thing to do for other people. That's going to suck for some people, because some people are sitting on 2000, 3000 series cards because they were waiting to upgrade. So that's just where we are right now.
All right. DB, any comments on this? Nope. All right, let's jump into our actually next few stories. All revolve around NetEase. Get Magic, if you want to hit the first one real quick.
Okay, and I apologize, chat. It's going to take us a while to catch up on the comments. The Marvel Rivals story over on IGN by Rebecca Valentine. NetEase founder reportedly almost canceled Marvel Rivals because it didn't use original IP. NetEase's Marvel Rivals can't be described as anything less than a hit. Matt Piscatella attested to this as well, called it, I don't know if he was trying to put up as much of a number on it as he said, but he talked about it in the same breath as Call of Duty and Fortnite as being in the top 10 of these big monolithic games that kind of suck all the air out of the room in terms of the 40% of gamers on console that spend a chunk of their time playing these live service games. Netting 10 million players in just 3 days from launch and raking in millions for developer NetEase in the week since. But a new report suggests that NetEase CEO and founder William Ding nearly canceled the game due to a reluctance to use licensed IP. The report comes from Bloomberg and describes the current situation at NetEase. Ding is actively cutting jobs, closing studios, and withdrawing from investment overseas. The goal, per the report, is a smaller, tighter portfolio that can stave off a recent growth decline and compete with rivals Tencent and MiHoYo. And at that point, I will pass it over to you, DBQ, for the follow-on story.
Yeah, so the follow-up story is, I think that speaks to some of these follow-up stories in terms of the environment that NetEase is working in terms of Tencent and MiHoYo, in terms of the volume and numbers and revenue that they're dealing in, because then we also got stories this week of support studios and creative developer or creative director. Some of the North American support team and designers there were laid off around NetEase. So this is coming off of GameDeveloper.com from Justin Carter. So, and again, it speaks to the statements from NetEase in terms of condensing down and streamlining some of their business practices and focusing on a smaller range of titles. And so these two stories pair well together because it's a surprise to hear layoffs for a game that is going as gangbusters as this, but also when you pair it with who they're comparing their revenue with, you start to understand kind of the market that they are competing against.
Tao, you're on mute if you're talking.
Sorry. And my final story here, sorry about that, for Marvel Rivals.
I thought you were just coughing a lot, you know.
No, well, I was, but I'm glad I was muted at that time. Is about them banning a third-party plugin called Blitz, which I think I might have heard about in the past. It's used for a bunch of games like Valorant, Fortnite, kind of Apex Legends, stuff like that. From what I'm able to gather, it has like real-time leaderboards. It can do in-game damage information. So basically, it has all this stuff that you can put on your screen, you know, as you're playing the game. I didn't really think it was a huge deal, but evidently NetEase did, and they have banned it. Currently, they have banned it, but I'm trying to look on this article. So they're saying that we deem this program as cheating software and will no longer allow its users its use during gameplay. The announcement read. But the actual I don't know if it was a CEO, someone actually Blitz said that it's temporary, and they're currently pausing the overlay currently for Marvel Rivals, but sounds like they're trying to do something that would get this working again. I'm not really sure how. Like if it's for Marvel Rivals, if it's like a real time information, you know, gathering system. I don't know if they're just like turn off certain things or like how they're going to get around it, but they didn't really explain. They just said that this is only temporary. Hopefully this is only temporary, and that they'll get it going again at some point in the future. But I just thought it was kind of interesting because I like I said, I thought I had heard about this, and maybe it was from Fortnite because you know, like I said, it can be used on Fortnite. But I mean, okay, like I know it's like real time like stats and stuff. Like you can see all your team information, which I guess you really can't during gameplay. Really, sort of. I guess maybe just health and shields when you're playing Marvel Rivals. But like this gives you all that information too. Like you know, like when their ultimate's gonna want to come up. You know, I guess that's important. But I mean, if you're playing with like randoms, like obviously, yeah, unless you're talking to people, you know, you're really not going to know. I think there is visual cues though when you're playing too, like of your teammates, or maybe even just like a text might pop up, which I guess is kind of, you know, in the heat of battle. And I mean, this game is like you're always pretty much constantly moving. It might be kind of hard to see, but if you have like an overlay that's just kind of on your screen there all the time, maybe, you know, I guess maybe that's kind of cheating. I don't know. I think it's a little overblown for me, you know, just for me personally, but obviously, you know, and it's not like I guess it's like tracking information, but it's not like you're like changing anything within the game itself, really. You know, it's not like you're modding it or cheating, you know, in that respect. But you know, it's their game, I guess. They can do what they want. But any comments on that? Have you guys heard of this plugin before, or this app? No.
I haven't, and I haven't jumped in on Marvel Rivals yet. Although I saw one of the big streamers, Shroud, is playing it, so I'm like, oh well, maybe this is like a legit thing I need to think about in combination with Piscatella's statement yesterday. But World of Warships also has mods, and I have used them. Except recently they've gotten like goofy and kind of how like it's like you can apply them one time and then anytime after that I go back to the launcher, like I can't get in the launch. So, but I've always felt weird about using mods in a multiplayer game. And I get it. I have the same philosophy, like kind of like you were saying, Tao. It's like, well, it doesn't really change anything. Like it allows me to set up the UI more so like to suit me, but it does feel weird about doing something that, you know, that essentially you're going up against other players who aren't. So I guess I just feel like at the end of the day, maybe the cleanest thing is just like disallow anything like that. But you know,
yeah, I mean, I could see maybe them banning this for like when they do like their championship tournaments and stuff like that. That maybe makes sense. Obviously they want people, try to have as, clean of a slate as possible. Everyone starting on the same ground. But if it's just like a random person, playing, quick match, it's not even competitive or anything. I mean, sure. But like I said, they obviously see something that's going on. Maybe they can see people, that, hey, these people are winning like more because they have all this information in there. But it's just kind of weird to me, at least. DB, any comments on this one or anything else we've talked about? It looks like too,
Yeah, I just wanna-
there's a couple other studios too. They're looking to, I guess, offload or possibly sell. Quantum.
Yeah, I just want to call back to some of the comments going on in chat with David Faulkner. His analysis there, I think, is real in terms of the challenges of Chinese development and Western regulations. And then Nate's kind of counterpoint to that of cutting more than one team, as you were just talking about, Tao. I think that is a combo of both, right? It's a combo of consolidating down and avoiding some regulations, not avoiding, but not having to deal with them. But then also the challenge of the tightness of this marketplace. And yes, I think, as you said, Game Logic, we've got big streamers playing it. It's Piscatella's talking about it in terms of kind of one of the big multiplayer games in the moment, but that moment is a wave that you want to continue to try to ride, and you never know when it crashes. And I think that's the challenge of any of these live servers, is the sustainability and the kind of how much you need to invest in order to keep that sustainability going.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's jump into our Ron Robin here as we're. All right, did you want to say something, Game Logic?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly kind of same thing DBQ was saying, like clean up just on a few comments in chat. One thing was Hero Down Under asked, has a lost records conversation happened already? Yeah, we covered that Hero Down Under. So once we get done, hopefully you'll get a chance to go back and hear that earlier in the podcast. Another thing I want to cover, there's a lot of conversation around alpha and like how Starter Citizen is handling and whatever. And one of the things that I constantly preach working in software development with my own teams and myself when I'm marketing something, how do you as the customer know that it's an alpha? You only know because I tell you, right? If I call it a beta, maybe it's a beta, maybe it's an alpha, you don't really know, but you believe it's whatever I tell you, right? So it's all a matter of perception and managing that. And Star Citizen has chosen to go about it a certain way. And in some ways, maybe that's good, and in other ways, maybe it's bad. But I constantly caution gamers who ascribe, like, this is the whole early access problem, right? Who ascribe a certain definition or extract a certain meaning out of something because of what the developers call it. I'm like, understand that the developers are calling it whatever they want you to believe it is, right? Regardless of how many lines of code have been written or how many years I've been working on it. The last thing I'll mention is Falky also asks, are the problems that are on the RTX 50 cards likely to be seen on the AMD cards? And Paul already answered him, no, I would concur with that. However, what I would say is probably not going to see the same problems, but there were problems with the 7900 XTX and I think the 7900 XT when they first came out. In general, I personally feel, I could be wrong subjectively, I personally feel like with AMD cards, there tends to be a little more early adopter stuff to clean up and a little bit more of kvetching back and forth between AMD and its AIB vendors and whose fault something is, like when cards first release, and to just give it some soak time, right? Let the things come out, let other people discover the bugs and figure it out. In recent years, I think in recent 2 generations, what we're seeing now is NVIDIA is kind of having the same thing at first launch. Again, give it some soak time, let these things balance out, stabilize, let other people let hardware unboxed, right, run into all these bugs and rip the cover off of it, and then upgrade, when the smoke settles a little bit. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tal.
No, you're all good. Let's jump into our round robin as we end out the night here. I'm going to skip past 2 of my games, Call of Duty and No Man's Sky. It was kind of just going to be quick hits, and Call of Duty I could talk for a while anyways. But I want to jump into Marvel Rivals real quick because they had their second half of their season 1 dropped, where they dropped their there was another map that they dropped, and along with the second half of the Fantastic Four, so they dropped the Thing and Human Torch. and they're both very good. I've been playing actually quite a lot of it the last few days. And Human Torch, he's DPS or I forgot what they're called in Marvel Rivals, but he's basically a DPS. He is always flying. Obviously, he's got this fire powers. He's got a pretty good ultimate that actually can team up with Storm rather well, and I can see them probably nerfing that in the future because it's awfully powerful. And then the thing also, he's a Vanguard or tank. They call them Vanguards here. And he's actually really good too for only having like, I think he has really only 3 moves, 4 I guess if it's his regular kind of just punching action, and then he has like a charge up punch that he can do, and then he can like jump on he can jump on teammates and basically give them like a 6-second damage reduction. So when they're getting hit, they don't get hurt as much. And then kind of a charging slam that he can do, which is actually pretty cool. But the thing is with his one like kind of charge punch, even though it takes like maybe a couple seconds, 2 or 3 seconds to charge up, and then it's like just a harder punch they can do. That thing doesn't have any kind of cooldown, so you can just like keep punching people like with that, and then you can like do his regular punch and then kind of charge that up and hit him. So he can take out people pretty quickly, even another tank, especially if he's got people helping him. I could see them nerfing that too. His other kind of team up abilities are just kind of the same thing, like with the Hulk with Wolverine. He can throw Wolverine kind of like a fastball special, and then he has a shield that he can do with I think the Invisible Woman when she's on the team. He gets a little extra shielding for like I think 5 or 6 seconds, probably. Usually not too long. Those 5 or 6 seconds, man, I'll tell you, sometimes seems like an eternity when stuff like that's happening to you. It can feel like it's a really long time, and it can take you out pretty quickly if you have the right kind of team that behind you. So those 2 have dropped. Looks like so when they do these seasons, and it looks like they're doing half seasons now, or we'll have a full season, but they kind of cut them in half. They do like these special quests as they come out. They actually have Blade as kind of the theme, so I don't know if he's going to be coming either sometime this season, dropping as an actual character, or maybe he'll come out the next season. So that'd be pretty cool to have Blade, especially since when they dropped the Fantastic Four at the beginning of the season, or Mr. Fantastic and Reed Richards, kind of the theme around it was you're fighting Dracula. So having Blade on there obviously would make sense. I'm assuming maybe he'll be dropped. I'm trying to think in season 0, I don't think they introduced anybody like after the initial, obviously they had like 33 people. So I don't know if he's just going to be dropped at a later date or something, or if he's just like, he's just kind of part of the story, but he's not going to actually be a character yet. Kind of like how Doctor Doom's kind of an overall villain in this game, but he hasn't been in the game yet either too. So it's kind of weird, but hopefully we'll see him. And then obviously there's been all kind of leaks with all these other characters. So I don't know if that's just like future things that people have data mined and stuff like that. I won't even go into that, but it's just kind of weird that he's kind of part of the story, or at least part of the lore, but we haven't actually seen him as a character yet. So, but I'm still having a lot of fun with this game. Still, even now, like I said before, like 2-3 seconds, you jump into the game like pretty much right away. So it's actually pretty nice that this game's, I guess, so popular. There's always people playing, so that's nice. DB, what you got here? So you got a golf game.
Just a quick hit for time. Last week I talked a lot about PGA Tour 2K25, which the early access came out this week. The full game releases on the 28th. I haven't been able to convince myself to drop $100 plus on the early access. So, but I did install the first look. Again, there's a demo on all platforms, or at least on Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, and playing it on Steam Deck and on my desktop, and settings on medium on Steam Deck, and it's running pretty smooth. Looks good. Actually, it's running really butterly smooth. It runs just as smooth as it is on my higher settings on the desktop as well. So it makes me think about where I'm going to end up picking this up, because having it on Steam Deck is pretty convenient to sit in another room and knock out a couple holes. So
nice. All right, and Game Logic, you have a couple games here.
Yeah, I'm only going to cover one of them, Sid Meier Civilization 7, and it's interesting. I think we've talked a lot tonight about the impact of the Steam Deck. I think we're kind of seeing a second phase of what is essentially the consolification of games and UI and design, this time oriented around the Steam Deck. So we had this when games started going more and more cross between consoles and PCs, kind of in the latter half of the 360 PS3 generation. Definitely in a PS4 where we saw a lot of weapon wheels in UIs, Deus Ex: The Invisible War, which I think was a 360 game. I think it was Invisible War. It was the second Deus Ex. That really kind of was the convergence point where we started to see a lot of consolification. We're starting to see it now. I think you see that in Sid Meier's Civilization 7. Do you have that timeline wrong? You
I'm looking it up right now because I think Invisible War feels like the sequel that was on console, but not the Square kind of second generation of those. So, but okay. I'll look it up. Go ahead and keep talking.
Okay. I think you see a lot of that in Sid Meier's Civilization 7. A lot of things, I don't want to call them dumbed down, but there are some things that are buried. There are definitely some controls that it seems like aren't there and I can't get to. For instance, Civilization has always had a thing where some button or a UI thing you could click, and then once you clicked it, you could arrow through to hit every single military unit or every single mobile unit that was able on the map. That's not there now. You cannot rename cities, which has in the past been a huge thing for people. I have always historically named my cities based on places where I've lived. Because I've lived in like 15 different places. So, my first 15 cities, I, could always name them after. So now you can't. And that's a huge problem. There's and so there's things like, I think what you're seeing in Civilization 7 in terms of reviews and community uptake, there are things like that I think are actually issues with things that are just, Civ 7 is just different. And I think it's different because it's time. Like, we've done 6 iterations of Civ. It's been a series that's going on 30 years now. We're far off from Sid Meier's original design, and I'm not going to be bent out of shape that a game at this point in its franchise history decides it's going to inflect and do some really different things from a design perspective. That I'm okay with. Taking away the quality of life things as part of that journey, to me, doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that you can't rename cities. It doesn't make sense that you can't tab through and hit every place. By the same token, the menu where you could tab through and hit like all of your different cities isn't there, and that doesn't make sense. In the meantime, there are some paradigm shifts. Diplomacy seems to be a much bigger deal this time around, and to the point where the NPCs push you into diplomacy. Whereas in the past, I've historically been able to play a Civ scenario and never be bothered by diplomacy until I absolutely wanted to. Could go very frequently, could play a Civ scenario and never engage in military action with the opponent until very late in the game. That appears to the AI seems to be much more engaged in kind of the geopolitical dynamic and will push you into warfare. It's much easier now to kind of tip them across the line into hostilities. It's a lot more sensitive. There's some goofiness in the diplomacy dialogue back and forth because it always refers to you as accepting a diplomatic action from the AI, even when it's negative. So it will ask you things like, do you accept this declaration of war by the other person? And I'm like, okay, like, by not accepting it, do they not declare war? Like, no. So then why are you asking me that? So there are things like that. Which is fine. That's a fine paradigm shift to like force players to engage more with the diplomacy. But that's the thing that's making people cranky. There's some other like deep seated things, just kind of mechanics of how the game works. That again, I'm kind of okay with in the approach that it's taking. I think another thing that's making people cranky is like there are 3 distinct kind of epochs of ages as you matriculate through the tech tree and modernization. And those things have some differences in rule application that I think is making people cranky, that it feels like 3 distinct mini games. I haven't gotten that deeply into it. I've spent a couple hours with my first scenario. Oh, and I think the huge paradigm change, and I think this is tripping across some of the people who are in like this DEI complaint spaces. Before you have historically, like whatever civilization you got was historically like your leader was actually historically accurate, right? But now when I hit random, you can often get a distinct leader who is not, but in a distinct civilization. So I have
Right. It's leaders who are not necessarily political government leaders. Yeah.
Yes, or aren't part of those civilizations. So so in my scenario, I have Friedrich, I think the first king of Prussia, and the civilization he heads is Rome. So and then I have Isabella, who was a Spanish monarch, who is heading the gosh, what does she have? Who's heading the Egyptians. And so that creates some unique dynamics. I think part of this is to get people exposed to more historical figures that don't just come from, no offense to anybody, but white European nations. And I think that's fine. And also then there are some civilizations that only exist within their epoch. So there are some civilizations that will have died off in the ancient epoch that like you'll transition to a different civilization right in the second epoch. So I think all these things are fine. Great Scott. One of the biggest intentions of civilization is to expose people to history. So if you're getting exposed to more history, I don't know why that makes people cranky. I'm fine with it because those are the things that cause me to spool off and not only dig into the Civipedia, but then go off into Wikipedia and look things up. So there's some big paradigm shifts that I think are making people who've been playing Civ for 30 years bent out of shape because it's not the same thing that they're used to. Again, I'm okay with that. The quality of life things that should be there so that you can engage in playing in this new paradigm in an efficient manner, those are things that are bending me out of shape. That all being said, I'm having fun playing the game.
Nice. DB, did you were you able to look up
Sure. Yeah. Just a real quick, Invisible War was 2003. And then the second generation of them was Human Revolution in 11 and Fall of Mankind Divided in 16.
So when I talk about the consolification of when we started seeing changes in PC game design, when a lot of us started talking about being cranky because it felt like PC game UI game design was being dumbed down. And I didn't use those terms. I kind of don't like those terms, but there's definitely like, hey, everything's a weapon wheel now instead of like the more nuanced, sophisticated design. Like that was about that era, right? So going into heading into the 360 PS3 generation was the one I felt.
Yeah, so you were correct. Invisible War was right. Yep.
Nice. All right. Anything else for our roundout? All right. Excuse me. Next week, couple big games coming out. DB had mentioned the one, obviously, PGA Tour 2K25 come out PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. And also Monster Hunter Wilds is coming out for those same systems, PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. So maybe I'll be getting Wilds. We'll see. I know my one friend is a huge, he's pretty big Monster Hunter player, so he's played Rise and Worlds, the last couple of games that came out. So I'm sure he's probably going to pick this one up too. So we'll see. It looks really good. I mean, I've been really liking what I've seen. The animation looks great, like of the monsters themselves. This kind of goes back to there's that one kind of actually, I guess those are different companies. Actually, now that I think about it, never mind. But the animation, it looks really good. The way the monsters are moved, like I don't know, like more. I won't say natural because obviously these monsters aren't real, but you know they look like actual animals out in the wild compared to some of the other games that I've played before. But yeah, it looks pretty cool. So I'm definitely thinking of picking up that one. All right, so that is the end of episode number 376. Next week, Mr. Game Logic will be the primary host with DB and myself should be here. Any other last comments or anything, gentlemen, before we head out? Thank you, everybody who did stop by the comments. Wara, Paul's Gaming Live, Nate, Hero was there, I believe, for a little bit. David, Brap, thank you guys. As always, had a lot of cool comments. Sorry, we kind of talked a lot about Avowed and some of our main GX stuff, so we might have skipped your comments, but we definitely at least try to read them and get them up there as we go along. Thank you, gentlemen, Game Logic, DBQ Hams, for joining me tonight. It's good to be back. Thank you, everybody out there. If you've watching us live or if you watch us on VOD, either on YouTube or SoundCloud or wherever you catch our podcasts, take care of yourselves out there. and we will see you next week.